It feels so good to have one of our Straw Hats back in this series once again. The way that Oda has continued to build upon this mystery since chapter 908, with the insane Instant Messenger Sama walking up the steps, not carrying Luffy, Blackbeard, or Shirahoshi's posters. Instead, carrying a picture of Vivi. And then we start hearing about all of the events that took place within the Reverie. Then chapter 956 drops and Alabasta's in shambles. And all of us are like, what happened in Alabasta? All right, like Brian Windhorst, what is really happening over there? And so throughout all this time, we were all wondering, when is it going to be? When is it going to be? What chapter, what moment, what situation is going to call for it? When is Vivi going to pop back into the story? And we finally got that answer in a way that I'm sure none of us expected. Because I know I most certainly was expecting Vivi to show up in a post-arc. But Oda's like, this is the final saga. This is the final saga. We're going to bring Vivi back mid-Egghead Island. And so that's why I was like, you know what? Vivi's back. I have to do this Afterthoughts. I am short on time. By the time this video goes live, the Eagles-Chiefs game will have been over. And I hope I'm on the right side of history. Because ladies and gentlemen, you already know what it is around these parts. Go Birds! Go Birds! Fly, Eagles, fly. I mean, bro, I've been bleeding green for so many years that anytime we're put in these scenarios, right? I was there for McNabb and T.O. I was there for Nick Foles going up and like somewhere in the historic run. And now I'm here for the Jalen Hurts connection, man. I'm so hyped for later today, bro. But I was like, you know what? Before we get into that, I have to talk about this One Piece chapter. I have to. But before we get into the One Piece chapter, I do have a few comments that I got from the members. Shout out to the members who came out and left some comments for this particular Afterthoughts. Before we get into that, coming off of last night's awesome, and I stress that, bro, awesome, like the Miz. I came to play, you know what I mean, bro? Like, awesome. Anime episode, man, from beginning to end. That episode last night, which covered the Conqueror's Coding chapter of Luffy and Kaido splitting the skies. Both of them, because last time, of course, in chapter 1010's adaptation, episode 1028, we got to see Luffy go up in like swimwear. And the following, whenever they came back, and I believe it was episode 1031, coming off of the filler, and chapter 1011, we got to see them hit each other, but in the distance, we got to see them like kind of like not, they clashed, but they didn't touch, but nothing split in the skies. This time around, the skies split. And to see the way the anime handled this, we all knew it was going to be special, and just based on the fact that that was the main emphasis, the main focus of opening 24, we all knew it was going to be a special episode. But not like that, man. Not like that. Those anime original sequences they added, especially with Momonosuke, and that episode legitimately had me super emotional, man. And so just a top tier episode last night, and Henry Thurlow wasn't lying when he said 2023 was going to be the year for the One Piece anime, because we are living it. We are living it each and every single week, and that's exactly what I want to start off this video with, because apparently, according to my boy Arthur, shout out to Library of Ohara, states that the One Piece anime is going to be going on a break here in a couple of weeks, and I have the anime schedule right here. Of course, we had the episode 1051, incredible episode. Then next week, we're going to have episode 1052. Then the week after that, we're going to have 1053. And then March 5th and March 12th, we're not going to have anime episodes. They're going to be on a break. And then they're going to be coming back with episode 1054 on March 19th. Now, something I find very interesting about this is that chapter 1053 led us into the final saga break, right? Where we're in a 1 month break waiting for chapter 1054 to be released. And now we're going to be going on a 2 week break between episodes 1053 and 1054. What is it with 1053 and 1054 that a break needs to happen in the middle? So I'm expecting some greatness. Obviously, they've been giving us greatness every single week, right? No matter the material, no matter the content. But of course, with the stuff that we're in, the climax of Onigashima, I'm just super excited to see what they're going to bring to us. So we're going to be going on break 2 weeks. Then we'll be right up back in like swimwear with the One Piece anime on March 19th. So once again, we're getting 2 more episodes before this break happens. So 1052, 1053, then break for 2 weeks in the beginning of March. And then towards the end of March, we'll be back with episode 1054, which I'm going to assume if 1052 and do episode 10, chapter 1027 content, episode 1053 is more likely to do chapter 1028 content, then we're going to be coming back with chapter 1029 content. So we're going to be coming back potentially with the Killer Hawk and stuff. So that should be really exciting. Really, really exciting stuff. Then, before we continue talking about this week's chapter, in this eventful week, which it has been very eventful, Uzumaki-kan finally read The Stretch of Legend. I have not had the opportunity to watch the latest one for 1045 yet. I'm going to do that hopefully either in bits and pieces later tonight or a little bit more tomorrow. I wish I could watch the entire thing right now. But I did watch the incredible 1041, 1042, 1043, and 1044 reaction. And so if you're a fan of Uzumaki-kan's videos, over on his Patreon, he is currently in the middle of The Stretch of Legend and is about to read, I think it's 1046 next, until whatever. But he did do the legendary Gear 5 reveal stretch, and it was a legendary experience and reaction to go through that with him again, man. And so if you're subscribed to his Patreon, make sure to go watch that. And if you're not subscribed to his Patreon, wait for those videos to come out, man, on his channel. It is going to be special. Some incredible, incredible stuff. So nothing but love to the good brother Khan. But without further ado, let's get into this week's chapter, which was so much fun to read, man. And starting us off today with the comments, we've got my boy Michael Mickles, man. A good brother to the channel. My boy. Coming up in like somewhere that says, sorry I missed a 20k stream. Dude, Michael, for everything that you have done for us here, don't be sorry for anything. Don't be sorry for anything, dude. Thank you for everything you've continued to do for the channel throughout all of these years, man. I greatly, greatly appreciate you. All those gifted subs were epic and well-deserved. It was an insane stream, man. Y'all covered so much about the chapter, but I couldn't help but think of Sentomaru's fate when Saint Garcia arrives, which is so true. Like, now that we understand that Sentomaru is in a place where the Mark units are going to be listening directly to him, it's like, okay, then what are we going to do now? Because we see that he's going to attempt to protect Vegapunk as they leave the island. So how are Kizaru and St. J. Garcia Saturn going to respond to that? And you're absolutely right. I really think about that. He definitely won't tolerate traitors, and either will command Kizaru to kill him or do it himself, which would be an insane scenario. And it would actually raise the tension and the intensity of what we already believed was going to happen. Where after Lucci did what he did to Sentomaru, we were like, okay, how is Kizaru going to feel about that? But if Kizaru is forced into a scenario where he has to do something against Sentomaru himself, then, man, either way, Kizaru will have quite the internal conflict. Absolutely. Thanks for taking the time to do an Afterthoughts, even with your investment in the Super Bowl. Dude, no. We had to come on here and read the chapter, or talk about the chapter, man. But you're absolutely right. Like, it almost didn't happen, but the greatness was calling, you know. Good luck. I appreciate you, Michael Mickles, man. Thank you so much. But I love this idea of Kizaru potentially pulling up with St. J. Garcia Saturn, and we see all the insanity that's taking place. We see the aftermath, and Kizaru / Garcia gain word of what happened here, and of the Mark IIIs, because we've been talking about the possibilities of Garcia taking the Mark IIIs and or the Seraphims and turning them, right? Like, because there has to be a reason why Oda established a hierarchy, that the goal to stay at the very top of the hierarchy, which means at some point in time, whether it be an egghead or in the final part of the series, we're going to see them take full control of these units. And what better way than for than for that hierarchy to be shown visually than actually there, right? Which, now that we're going to be staying on Egghead a little longer based on this chapter, I do wonder if it's going to take place here. And that's kind of scary. That's kind of scary, man. So, but we don't know if Garcia can also deal with the Mark III units. With that being said, though, regardless of what happens there, you've provided a new scenario for a potential internal conflict for Kizaru that goes far beyond what we were all initially anticipating. Because if Garcia wants to test Kizaru's loyalty to him and to the cause by forcing him to be like, no, you have to exact your justice upon someone like a Sentomaru who is so close to you, what would Kizaru do? And we already knew there was going to be an arc that tested. We've already see that happening with testing the WGs and the Marines' sense of morality and whatnot. So, and what their justice is. So I'm excited to see what, if that ends up happening, how is Kizaru going to respond? How is Kizaru going to respond, man? But thank you, Michael Mickles, for that awesome, awesome comment and some great food for thought, because now I'm very curious. Very, very curious. So the next one comes in from Gold Slash, who says, Zoro got that drip going on, saving Egghead's outfits designs. Dude, so true. So true, because, you know, some of them, they do look decent, but most of them, it's like we're coming off of some of their best drip ever in Onigashima. And then we transition over to Egghead, and everyone just looks like, I don't know, man. Some of them look really weird. Others look like they're on a beach. Actually, most of them look like they're on the beach somewhere, which, hey, we're not complaining, but still, it's like, it's like, are we in Futurama? Are we at the beach? Are we at the combination of the two? Who knows? According to Oda, we're on Beachorama, right? Apparently so. But seeing his outfit designs, obviously Beskar Robin was slaying too. Oh, no doubt. And Stussy, man, dude. Stussy in this chapter. Telling you, gotta put Zoro and Stussy just at the front of like Gucci magazine. Right? You just have to. I'm really curious as to what people could Kuma be from. Me too, man. It is possible he was on God Valley before becoming the king of the Sorbet Kingdom. That's fascinating. The silhouette's like Celestial Dragon, so he's got to have some sort of connection, absolutely. Given his size, though, I'm not sure if he is a Celestial Dragon. On that same line of thought, before I go and continue... Actually, let me read your full comment and let me come back to that. What if it's a great terminal situation where most of the kingdom of God Valley is inside the walls, but the poor / the peasants live outside? But the people are extremely durable, so even from a young age, Kuma was subjected to being the indestructible slave for the dragons. After the God Valley incident, he escapes and becomes the king of Sorbet. However, he does not mess around with the WG, so he's branded as a tyrant king. So, but not allowing his people to be a part of the WG or participate in the reverie. Hope is like with the Gorosei dragon makes his move. At least someone from the Rev shows up to Egghead. So let me break this down a little bit. Because very interesting stuff is being stated here. So, for him potentially being on God Valley, before becoming the king of the Sorbet Kingdom, I never thought about such a possibility. That Kuma could potentially have been connected to God Valley. And could be from God Valley. If Kuma's flashback is going to give us more insight into the God Valley incident, what isn't connected to God Valley at this point? On your comment on the silhouettes looking like Celestial Dragons, that is 100%. I think that is exactly what Oda is going for. I think with especially the last silhouette that shows it right next to the buildings we were talking about in the chapter, that most certainly did look like a Celestial Dragon, and it just goes to show what adds way more emotional weight to the events that have taken place in the series so far, because now we see a person who tried so hard to be freed from being enslaved by the Celestial Dragons, and ultimately his fate led him to what? To being enslaved once again by the Celestial Dragons, as we saw him in the state that he was in back in chapter 908. And that would also connect Bonnie to attempting to get him up there, and the rage and the sadness that was in her heart at the time, and of course with Sabo as well, though I'm not sure if they have the full scope in terms of, well, they probably do. They probably do of what Kuma has had to deal with his entire time. I'm talking about like Sabo and them. I know Dragon does potentially, but I don't know if the rest of the crew does. But regardless, Kuma having to do that again, or having to go through that again, except this time he's not in the state of mind to be able to retaliate, right? It's just a really, really tragic tale. But when you get out of that little flashback scene and you see him climbing again as they're shooting at him, it's just, it's such an emotional, tragic story. for Kuma, man, that he's just subjected to so much just brutal treatments of his body and abuse, man. It's a really, really sad situation. So even from a young age, Kuma was supposed to be an indestructible slave for the dragons, which that's just so crazy to me. But your thoughts on, or your comment on the fact that he potentially escapes from the God Valley incident, becomes the king of the Sorbet Kingdom, through whatever means. But the fact that he and the WG were not seeing eye to eye, and they branded him as a tyrant king, even though he was not that. That, to me, has always been a very interesting part about that line, especially with the way that Bonnie speaks of him, because I've always thought it could go one of two ways. Number one, either Kuma truly was a tyrant who changed his ways, right, after a certain amount of time, or maybe he never was a tyrant to begin with, like you're saying. And in actuality, it's another one of those One Piece things where propaganda became truth. And in order to protect themselves and what they've been trying to do throughout the course of the series, they label this man as something that he's not, in order to keep their quote unquote justice going. And I think either scenario is interesting, but if we're gonna stay in line with what the flashback has provided to us so far, that very well could be the case, to where he was declared as the Tyrant King, or maybe the Tyrant King title has to do with something that he did, maybe in retaliation against the Celestial Dragons. Maybe it got individuals within his kingdom hurt. And because of that, it was similar to the King Riku situation back in Dressrosa. The king is seen as the individual who did all of that, right? As someone who is hated by the people. Whereas here, it would be a scenario where maybe on accident or in a fit of rage, after something took place with the Celestial Dragons, some civilians got caught in the crossfire or something along those lines. And from that point on, he was seen as a tyrant king who's willing to do whatever means necessary in order to accomplish his objective. And just knowing how One Piece flashbacks works, or how they work, we could be headed down that route. And that's gonna be extremely emotional, man. Extremely emotional. And on your final part here, on hoping that the Dragon Mix is moved to like now we're seeing with Garcia, I do too, man. And I think it will happen. I keep saying post Egghead, and with what we're seeing here, it could happen next chapter. You know what I mean? Like, it's just the way that Egghead is working. Every chapter ending we've gotten so far, the Garp stuff and Garcia, and now with Vivi, it's like we're getting stuff that I thought were going to be safe for post Wano or for post Egghead here. And it's like, I don't know, man. Egghead's crazy. Egghead's crazy. But thank you so much for the comment, dude. Great food for thought there. Subra. So shout out to Subra last night while doing the live reaction for the One Piece episode. He was like, yo, if we're going to do an Afterthoughts, I have a comment for you. And I was like, all right, I got you. We'll make sure to get the Afterthoughts done. So let's go ahead and read your comment here. Subra, thanks for keeping my request. No, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Like, the moment you said it, I was like, you know what? No, we have to do an Afterthoughts. We have to. The trader thing has been going crazy for people. Check a theory of Joe on Twitter why it's Pythagoras, and that's a cool theory. Okay, I definitely will make sure to do that. Now for my part, if it's a traitor, I think he'll be Edison. The real-life Edison had a rumor of betraying Nikola Tesla. Did he really betray Tesla? However, my theory is there's no traitor. If there's no traitor, it's Caribou. Okay, so Caribou still being on the island is going to play into the story, you know. And somebody actually brought that up within the stream. However, while doing the chapter reads, I realized an awesome thing about Caribou, and I'm quite sure of it. First of all, who do you think Caribou is working for? You know, I'm so interested in that as well. It's like, out of all the individuals in the One Piece verse, who people theorize as Blackbeard or Crocodile or the WG. However, Caribou at the time said he would be very happy with the info of Pluton, so I came to the conclusion that he is working for Morgans. If Caribou is working for Big News Morgans, man, Morgan's got all the info on Egghead related to Luffy and G5 from Caribou. And that's how he's getting all the information of everything that's currently happening on Egghead? That's kind of crazy, man. Because yeah, you do wonder, like, how in the world is he getting all this information? Caribou, but he still doesn't know the Gorosei are coming. Also, another little detail is Caribou might be the one who leaked the picture of G5 Luffy to Morgans. So Caribou was just like snapping pics. trying to put him on the gram. Now, everything aside, I think Caribou is doing all this stuff to show to the world that Luffy kidnapped Vegapunk. Which means if some of the satellites disappear, which will quite prove Luffy forcefully took Vegapunk. That's my theory for it. I'm so down for that. And it would not only the Caribou. The only thing about the Caribou thing is why is he trying to get that information for the ancient weapons, right? Like for if it was gonna be from Morgan's. Everything else that you're saying makes so much sense to me. In regards to Morgan's potentially being Caribou potentially being the one that relates so much of this information to him, but it's like, why would he want this information on Poseidon and on Pluton and stuff like that? It just, that to me makes no sense. In regards to, I thought that he would be doing that for someone who's attempting to get information on all of these weapons in order to attain all of them at some point. Which is why whenever Poseidon was first brought up, we with Caribou in that chapter with like the Joy Boy stuff and whatnot. That's whenever all of us started putting the pieces together. Oh, this could potentially be Kaido, right? Whenever Kaido became much more prominent in the story, we're like, yo, he could actually be working for Kaido. So this is such a great question. But in regards to Luffy forcefully taking Vegapunk and all this, everything that takes place from here and people disappearing is going to be the proof that Luffy takes Vegapunk, I completely agree. I completely agree with it. I think that's actually what is going to take place here. But this whole Caribou thing is very interesting. I like this idea. I need to know, or maybe it's just trying to get the information for like Poseidon and Pluton and them, to give it to Morgan's just based on, just to have it as knowledge. I'm curious, Super. I'm curious. That is a very interesting theory. So you think it could either be Edison or Caribou. Another little detail I'll point out, which is Luffy's shoes are broken. Absolutely. Even though it's against my theory, there's a foreshadowing might be here. And so before I continue, let me continue so I can get all your thoughts. And if satellites are traders, then every star will be stuck in place because of the shoes. However, Luffy won't because his shoes broke. That is 100% true. Final comment on my comment from last week, Vegapunk warped, which I think kind of going in that direction. Shaka said that the monitors can see everything in the lab, however, it won't if the camera got destroyed. So there's a possibility Vegapunk is not there anymore. If Vegapunk got warped, where do you think he might be? So let's go ahead and break this down. Let's talk about the trader first, and then I want to talk about Luffy's shoes. So in regards to the trader, of course, we've been talking about the Lilith possibility, one of the satellites being the ones behind this. The Edison thing is very interesting, as well as Pythagoras. I look forward to reading more on Joe's thought process on that. That's actually very interesting, considering that was like he was looking at himself type of scenario, or I don't know. I don't know what was cooking there, but I'm so interested in hearing that from Joe's perspective. But this whole Caribou thing fascinates me. It really does. It really does. Because to me, it's like it can only go one of two ways. Either it is one of the satellites, or three ways. It's Caribou, or it is another character, a third party that we have not seen yet, that is currently up there on the dome with them. And people have brought up the ideas of a Shiryu or a Lafitte or one of these characters from the outside world that managed to make themselves here, right? And make themselves at home here. So it's like, is it going to be a third party, or is it an individual that we believe is on our side? I'm starting to lean more towards somebody who's on our side, specifically because Oda did not show the shoes, right? Didn't show because I feel like if we would have seen the shoes, we would have had the biggest major indicator as to who this character is. So I don't know, man. I'm starting to lean towards it being one of the satellites. I am. And considering we're about to head into some Vegapunk, heavy Vegapunk stuff here, I'm going to assume with like the Kuma Bonnie backstory, the more we get on Shaka as a character who's currently like in the lead of this entire scenario here that's incoming. It's like, for me, we're about to get some heavy Vegapunk stuff, and so we have to see both sides of Vegapunk, and for one of the Vegapunks to be a traitor. For whatever reason that would lead us down towards in the rest of the arc, I find that to be so interesting. And so if that actually ends up being the case, I'd be down for that. But your Caribou theory is very, 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 very interesting. So then I want to talk about this Luffy's shoes thing. Now, obviously, there was major emphasis that was put on this. We know it's going to come back at some way, shape, or form. And I'm right there with you in regards to it's going to be used in one of two ways. I love, shout out to my boy Dak Sake. We actually talked about this over in a collaboration that we did on Friday over on his channel. So if you would like to hear us go more in depth into this, definitely go make sure to watch that podcast. But we talked about this in a little bit, where he was presenting the idea that potentially his shoes not working could actually work against them in regards to when they try to leave the island. And Luffy does not tell anyone about the fact that his shoes are broken, and they attempt to get out of there utilizing the technology that is in their feet, but Luffy is unable to hover and or float or be used as a magnet to go over there towards them. He's gonna have to stay here, right? Like, let's just say they all boom out, Luffy gets left off because they think he's wearing the right shoes, the right material, and he actually is forced to stay behind as the rest of the crew goes on forward. That was an idea brought up by Dak that I thought was very interesting. And then, of course, you're bringing up the possibility of, you know, everyone else, if we really are starting to see like traders, and they're going to be using the technology at hand and to be able to overpower the Straw Hats, or use the technology against the Straw Hats. The fact that Luffy's shoes are broken could end up being a positive thing, right? Where, let's just say, everyone else is being pulled or stopped, or whatever the case may be, utilizing their shoes and their clothes. In Luffy's case, since he doesn't have the shoes, it's always the chancletas, man. Since he does not have the Vega Force ones anymore, it's like now he won't have to be subjected to the same things that everybody else will, if that ends up being what takes place. I'm so interested, though, because we know that Oda doesn't put anything in there for no reason. And for his shoes to be broken, that means there's going to be consequential stuff that's going to happen because of that very soon. So, but actually, let me stay on that for a second. Actually, I have another comment that actually goes in line with that. But in regards to Vegapunk warping, if he is actually not here, because I still definitely do believe that that he's somewhere here. I don't know where, somewhere here. But if he did warp to somewhere else, I'm going to assume it's either with Dragon. So I'm gonna say one of three places: Dragon, to Kuma, or to Elbaf. Elbaf, obviously, because that would give us the opportunity to go reunite with Vegapunk over there as soon as possible. Dragon, because come on, man, come on. But Kuma, there is a sense of guilt within Vegapunk's heart, and or a sense to see this thing to the end, that would force him to go over to Kuma and see everything that's happening there on the red line. Because I think it would be very, very interesting, considering those are the three places that we've seen, besides like the stuff happening in the Island Full of Lead or in the World Economic Journal. The three places we've seen besides those two are, of course, Egghead Island, and then going over and seeing the Kamabaka Kingdom, as well as the Red Line. So if Vegapunk were to show up in one of those two locations, we've already seen them within this arc. And it would just be insane. So if he were to warp away, I think it'd be one of those two locations. But I do think he's still here. I just don't know where he is. And that to me is such an interesting part of all of this, right? So, but it's like, man, and then you're right, it's like the potential possibility of like the camera being destroyed, or was it moved, or was it something that just took place without the camera being moved at all, right? Because it was something brand new. I don't know, man, because maybe the camera couldn't pick up on it. It's just so interesting. But connecting your Luffy shoes comment, there was another comment, because I wanted to talk about this, and it is right here, actually the very next comment, from Quasar D Games, who says, I wonder if Luffy being tired from running around is a sign of Gear 5's side effects, or Gear 5's effects on his body. It might just be for the gag. So it definitely is, because it's Oda. It definitely is for a comedic gag, but I think this one is serious repercussions of Gear 5. And the reason why I say this, leading back into Suber's comment, is I most certainly do believe that coming off of that 1044 to 1049 stretch, we were all wondering, what are going to be the repercussions of Gear 5? This is a power-up of absolute legend. Obviously, this is showing like a mastery of his fruit to a certain extent, but it still has to come with some sort of repercussions. And we all, like, with his heartbeat feeling funny, we're like, okay, when are we going to find out more about the repercussions of this ability? And of course, he had to sleep for a very long time to get his energy back, so we saw that at the end of Wano. But here, he didn't have that opportunity to go and sleep and get his energy back and or eat. So he hasn't slept, he hasn't eaten, and he just got out of the form that allows his heartbeat to quote-unquote feel funny, and it makes it go like super, super fast, right? gets out of Gear 5, and he is so exhausted after simply looking over Vegapunk. This is the same Monkey D. Luffy that ran around in the Paramount War for so long. Granted, he had the hormone shots, but still, he ran around for a very, very long time. We've known Luffy to have this significant stamina throughout the entire course of the series. For him to be tired after just looking for Vegapunk is, to me, heavily emphasized by Oda, because he's trying to let us know these are the direct side effects of him using G5 and not having the proper care that takes place after. Right, like not having his food, not having his rest, whatever the case may be. This is what happens when you use Gear 5 and you don't have that next part, that next resting point, that next, the food that'll replenish you. This is what happens if you just go from Gear 5 into another task that requires energy. You're going to be extremely exhausted. It reminds us of what happens in chapter 1045, where Luffy gets out of Gear 5 for the first time and he gets very, very old and he forces himself back into Gear 5. That might have been our very first indication to what exactly it is doing to his body that we can't really see. And it's making him extremely exhausted because it's taking so much energy out of him. Not just energy, but his heartbeat is actually sounding different, right? So, to me, this is the side effects of Gear 5. And that's why I believe that everything connects in regards to whatever's going to happen with the consequential stuff of Luffy's shoes having broken. I think it's also going to lead into him being tired and exhausted after using Gear 5, and this being one of the side effects, because there has to be a reason why Luffy and Zoro are put here in front of Lucci and Kaku by themselves. Something's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen that is going to force them to move, and Luffy's going to be unable to because he's going to be too exhausted. Way too exhausted to do anything about it until he gets his energy back. This is like his new limit, right? Like Gear 2, with like if you overuse it, it'll be extremely bad. Gear 3 makes them very small. Gear 4, obviously, you need that time to get the hockey back. This looks like it could be this for Luffy, but for Gear 5. So I do believe that it is a sign of the effects, because if we just look at Luffy throughout the course of the series, he never really got tired from running like that. My man looked like he was legitimately like on his last legs. I mean, just look at him in that one panel with him and Zoro. He's got his tongue out like he's MJ, gasping for air. I mean, that's not normal. That's not normal. And so I wonder what other side effects are currently taking place, but that is the most noteworthy side effect. And it is going to play into whatever the shoe thing is going to lead us into, because he's going to be too tired. Luffy normally, let's just say that escape sequence happens, normal Luffy would be able to get on the ship, everything would just be just fine. What about if he's too exhausted to do that? And he's so tired, they try to grab him by the shoes, but they can't because he doesn't have the shoes. There's no way he'll be able to make it over there. So it's like, what happens, man? What happens is going to be consequential because of these two things taking place. Who knows? But I'm right there with Quasar Games that I do believe this is a side effect of Gear 5. I do. And that leads us here into our final comment of this Afterthoughts, which is Juan Carlos coming in and saying, I think Will get extremely when he hears that his son kidnapped Vegapunk. I think he's talking about Dragon. I think Dragon will get extremely when he hears that his son Vegapunk kidnapped Vegapunk, similar to how he thought Sabo killed Cobra. So talking about Dragon in regards to how he was sweating when he saw what happened with Sabo and Cobra, that wondering how his reaction is going to be when he finds out Luffy kidnapped Vegapunk, which is obviously someone very close to him. And I wonder how Dragon would feel about such a thing, considering, like you said, this is directly connected to him. Vegapunk, a close friend. Like, how would he feel about that? Would he approach the scenario similar to the way that he did with Sabo, where he would be like, wait a minute, we must confirm the facts first? Or after seeing that in the paper, would he be like, oh no, like my son's taking care of him, like he's taking care of him? I wonder what type of response he would have in regards to finding that all that information in the newspaper. I think that's something that we should all look out for, because it's going to be a major in him potentially understanding Luffy as a person, right? Where even though he was never around for him, perhaps through seeing all of his accomplishments and just knowing himself, maybe whenever he sees that line, knowing how the WG are when it comes to putting headlines out like that, and then after seeing what happened with Sabo, maybe he's going to question it. it's going to be like, no, there has to be something more to this, right? And it could lead to a major moment there for Dragon. So you're absolutely right. I'm looking forward to that, Juan Carlos, and seeing what Dragon's reaction to finding out that information is going to be. Because it is going to be all around the world. I mean, Vegapunk is one of the most world-renowned individuals. And according to this most recent chapter, according to Morgan's, he is one of the most respected individuals. He's the one who brought energy to so many of these islands. So this is going to bring notoriety to Luffy, where they're going to be like, man, he's such an evil pirate and a bad dude. How could he do this to Vegapunk? Like, but obviously that's how the series has been from the very beginning. Roger was seen as an infamous, horrible criminal, the worst of the worst, as was Whitebeard. And we know those are two of the kindest and most incredible souls in the series, especially Whitebeard. Like, Whitebeard's one of the most kind-hearted dudes ever. And to know that everybody in the world saw him as a villain, it's like, well, of course you're going to think the same way of Luffy, especially after seeing something like that. So I wonder how it's going to lead us into the final saga. And it's also going to lead us into when he's eventually crowned as the King of the Pirates and how he's received after that, right? What is going to be the public reception to seeing someone like Luffy becoming King of the Pirates? Some people will obviously celebrate. Others will be like, him? Like, the son of Dragon? The one who took out Kaido and Big Mom? The one who did this, who did that, right? Like, the public reception is going to be very interesting. But before we get into any of that, obviously, the whole thing with Dragon and Vegapunk and him figuring, and him learning this idea that Luffy has kidnapped Vegapunk, I wonder how he would take that. But that's something I guess we'll just have to wait and see. So that is it for today's Afterthoughts. Thank you so much for watching. This was a fun one. Just talking about this week's chapter. Wapol, man, I do not know how this whole thing came together with him and Vivi. Obviously, when we look back at chapter 956, so let me go ahead and do that before we close out here. When we look back at chapter 956, we remember what was stated for Wapol and Big News Morgan's, right, about having a scoop. So let me go ahead and pull this up here. So right here, we're moving office. Yes, boss, we've got a message from King Wapol. Mr. Morgan sounds like he's got some leaked intel. So specifically talking about the leaked intel, which is going to be very important to him. And then, of course, he added on to this later on whenever we saw Morgan's again. But for me, it's always so interesting. It is extremely interesting because why would Wapol save Vivi here? And after Sabo brought up to Dragon what the truth is, someone sitting on the empty throne, he saw something. So obviously something happened within the Reverie that forced all of these individuals to, or at the very least, that forced Sabo, being the only one that we know, saw it take place. But Sabo apparently saw something where he caught wind and or saw it with his own two eyes of he had to have seen it with his own two eyes of someone sitting on the empty throne. So he potentially could have seen the moment in which Instant Messenger Sama either took out King Cobra or whatever the case may be, right? With that being said, that could also mean that Sabo was not alone. Like we've talked about this entire time, Sabo potentially being with Vivi. If Sabo and Vivi witnessed this happen in front of his eyes, we cannot knock it out of realm's possibility that Wapol could have been there as well. So if Wapol was there with the two of them, I wonder how he would have felt seeing such a thing take place before him, just as a coward, just as an individual that must be afraid for his life, seeing the king of the world do this to King Cobra. Would that cause something within his heart to change? A major event like that happened before his eyes. Because we don't know what took place in the Reverie. We have these bits and pieces, but after what Sabo said in chapter 1060, anything is possible. We don't know if Instant Messenger Sama legitimately just pulled up and said, Palo, packed up. So, but it makes you think, or I should say, it makes you wonder who else was there to see that information. So now I'm going to assume we're going to see something very, very soon here. If Vivi was there to see all this take place, Vivi's going to tell Big News Morgans that someone is sitting at the very top of the world. Could you imagine that? This goes into my as a matter of fact, see, this is the thing about this chapter. I don't care. We're talking about this. For me, this potentially could be could lead us more into what Vivi's role is going to be heading into this next section of the story. Because right next to Luffy kidnapping Vegapunk, I would not be surprised if another major headline within that newspaper states that someone sits in the throne in Marijoa. Big News Morgan telling the whole world that someone is sitting on top of the Marijoa. And I wonder how that would be received from the WG, considering, they would probably treat us tabloid, like, don't believe everything that you hear. It's just a conspiracy theory, all that stuff, right? I can most certainly see that approach being taken. But I do believe that Vivi, if she truly did witness what happened here, is going to tell Morgans the truth in order for him to publish that in the newspaper. That could potentially be the reason why Vivi wanted to meet up with Morgans to begin with. To let him know the truth of what happened within the incident, which means we could potentially finally get to see what happened within the Reverie through Vivi's perspective, whether it be now or in post-Wano, because whatever Vivi saw is going to be the most important event in this series up to this point. Vivi potentially was able to see King Cobra die at the hands of Messenger-sama before her very eyes, and to recount and recollect that to the viewer. We're going to see 2 insane flashbacks here in the coming weeks. Bonnie's flashback with Bartholomew Kuma, and Vivi's flashback recounting what actually took place with King Cobra and Mr. Sama and Sabo. 2 extremely important flashbacks that could potentially recontextualize the entire series. Exciting stuff is inbound, but I most certainly do believe that Wapol's quote-unquote face turn, go straight heel to in the middle, but might mean that Wapol saw what happened there, and it kind of forced a little change of heart within him. So, with that being said, I can't wait to see where this goes. Because once we start seeing that, it's going to change. It's going to change all of us. In terms of, like I said before, it's going to recontextualize so much of the series and the events of the Reverie that we kept hearing bits and pieces of to see the major event take place before our very eyes. So if that were to happen, whether we find out through Vivi directly or whether right after the arc we see a newspaper, the newspaper right next to Luffy kidnapping Vegapunk, we have another major headline that says someone sits atop of the world of the Marijoa, then we can immediately put 2 and 2 together and be like, Vivi was the one that told him exactly what took place. And maybe then that's where we get the flashback to what took place within the Reverie. I have no idea how Oda's going to go about it, but the possibilities are so crazy. So crazy, man. But thank you all so much for watching. I truly, truly appreciate y'all. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your Sunday and or Monday. Still don't know how long it's going to take this video to go up, but I will see y'all then. Have a good one. Take care. Vivi is back in the story, and the possibilities continue to be endless with this incredible arc, man. Take care, and I'll see y'all next time.